I got a story time for y'all on the time that I was rejected. Fast forward, you know what I'm saying? The date was awesome. The date was phenomenal. We followed up. And we had already in the parking lot had made decisions like, hey, we're going to do this again. We're going to do this again. We're trying to put some things together. After that first date we had, this is kind of where things start taking a little bit of a turn. It was January 1st. She sends a message. It's back to back. It's like bing, bing, right? So in my mind, man, the first thing that came to my mind is like, dang, she had this in her notes. Man, was there something I could have done different? Maybe if I was the dream guy, maybe if I was the dream guy, I wouldn't be getting treated like this. Like, why can't I go back? Like, what is so wrong about asking a question? What is so wrong about getting clarity? What is so wrong about asking why? And he was like, man, look, bro, nothing is wrong about it. I just want to be sure that if you do it, you understand what you're stepping into. So your boy goes back. Sometimes you got to consider the source of the people who reject you, because so many people really don't even realize what they're rejecting. What's happening, party people? Welcome back to another episode. It's your boy, it's your host, Solo Dolo, Sean Walker, aka Coach Sean Walker, man. We are here. This platform exists to help others build happy, healthy, whole relationships, learning how to heal from rejection, learning how to love again, and do relationships in a biblical fashion. I know it's a long tagline. We'll get it right shortly. But if you're new to this episode, to this space, or you've been rocking with me for a while, obviously this is a new format. Welcome to the couch. We're getting comfortable. Okay, we're having genuine, honest, authentic conversations. And I'm not even going to hold us up too late, man, because we got some serious business to talk about. Because I got a story time for y'all on the time that I was rejected. I know it's crazy, right? I've sat on this long enough and have legitimately healed through it to be able to come to a platform like this and actually share it. Now, I've had my moments. I've shared it in glimpses. If you follow me on TikTok, I've dropped some nuggets here and there on my lessons learned from being rejected, what it was like, what were the takeaways, the spiritual maturity, a lot of the lenses in which I chose to view such a rejection from someone that I was in pursuit of. And it wasn't too long ago, but yet it was so beneficial. It was so transformational. And typically you don't hear those two words come together, right? Like, how is rejection being transformational? How is there anything good that comes out of rejection? And as those are fair questions, right? Like, those are legitimate questions. But I think hopefully throughout this conversation, you're given some different perspectives on how to view rejection, if that is an experience you have. Hopefully you're encouraged to not run from rejection at the end of this podcast, but ultimately that you're given a little bit of a better perspective on how to navigate through such a time and dealing with any kind of heartbreaking, emotional roller coaster like grief that you might experience when you're rejected by somebody you wanted, but then expresses that they don't want you in the same fashion. So let's just dive into the story, writing it vulnerable, because this was back in 2023, man. And we actually met in 2022, so I guess we should start there. This was in about September of 2022. Now, I got it that you boys on date naps, all right? And I got a unique, different view on date naps now compared to what I had then. And I'm sure that we'll get into those kinds of conversations in due time over on this channel. But for the meantime, the boy was on date naps. All right. I have already been through the ringer before on them, but now this time I'm checking them back out. I'm being a little bit more intentional. And so, all throughout the summer and even early spring, I'm meeting up with my accountability group, getting coaching, and being in such a coaching space where we're checking each other's highlights, lowlights of the week, giving life satisfactions. And this time I'm like, man, I think I got the capacity, man, to just start actually being intentional and being in pursuit. I'm a single guy, 24 years old. Now, at the time, I was 22 years old. And I desire to be married. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to put my feet out there. I'm trying to see what's up. I'm trying to see what's good. And after a pretty lengthy search, I come across an awesome, beautifully fit, beautiful girl over on Hinge. And I had to, even though your boy's a believer, I'm rocking with Jesus. That don't mean I lack game. Okay, I got a little juice in me. Okay, I'm gonna be humble about it. And I sent a message. Now, you probably ain't gonna think this is juice. You might think it's corny, but it worked. I sent a message and I said some kind of like quote that was like poetic, some like kind of poem. Quoted it, and then at the end tagged, a little like in cursive line, squiggly line, Dr. Martin Luther King, right? And it was in relation to what I was seeing on the profile, the certain descriptions and stuff that she was looking for. And so what's crazy is this was the second time I came across her profile, because the first time I missed it, right? I was actually thinking way too long and hard on like what to say. And, when you do that and you go inactive a little bit, your phone goes to the black screen. And so when I click back into the app, her profile's gone. So I'm low key disappointed, right? Because I was like, dang, I need to give myself a chance to be great. Like, that's tough. And so lo and behold, a few days later, her profile comes back up. I'm diligent. Okay. I'm persevering, resilient. All right. I got it like that. And so come across her profile and I send a message. She responds back, I want to say within like 48 hours. I don't know if it was 24, but I know for sure it was like within the first 48 hours. And so it was really dope, right? And we connected, having good conversation, laughs, just kind of getting to know each other a little bit. And then, the whole shebang and everything in between. And so as we're getting to know each other, I went ahead, risked it for the biscuit, and sent a quick message. Was like, man, this is going really well. Do you mind if I have your number? Take your number down. She agreed. She was cool with it. And so we get to iMessaging, right? And kind of introduced that same message thread in a similar way I introduced myself over on Hinge, just like in a little poetry-like fashion. This is now, I want to paint this picture, because you're probably looking at me like I'm some kind of, whatever. And that's cool, right? I'll take in all that. This just might be some of my assumptions moving, but let's just move with that narrative, right? Because your boy has never had and been in a romantic relationship. So this is like the first legitimate time of me stepping out into these treacherous waters. Okay. I've been on dating apps. I've played the whole fear of missing out, having multiple girls on my phone just for the sake of it, trying to be that guy who could relate to the other guys in the group chat who's talking about getting all the hoes and having all the girls in the phone. Phone is hot. Phone is tapped. Getting pictures. It's active. It's live. All that. I was that guy who tried to fit in and tried to make up for what I thought was lost time, because I didn't even experience that in high school. And main reason was because I wasn't even allowed to date growing up, right? Like that wasn't even a part of the picture. And so as I'm kind of stepping out of basically what I grew up in, being on my own, learning to be on my own, and obviously be responsible for my own decisions, I'm starting to think like, man, what I'm saying? Like this is something that I'm really willing to test out and give a legitimate try for the first time. I've never actually committed to a girl. Every time it got to those spaces where they started talking about coming out to see your boy, anything like that, I got scared. I dipped. Okay. I definitely had commitment issues. I was very manipulative in that same space too. Like I would say all the right things and make you feel as if I was interested. And then, after the first 2-week high, the butterfly high, dip. And some of y'all kind of know what I'm talking about. And maybe you're there. And hopefully this conversation that we unravel really opens your eyes to see not only how jacked up that is, how even little boyish that is, but just how much more valuable I think your relationship status and spaces can be when you actually move with intention, and why intentionality is so important, regardless of the outcome. In this case, my own rejection. And so fast forward, just kind of giving you some context as to what's all taking place. So this is my first rodeo. So I'm kind of going with what I know, right? The kindness, the gentleness, the poetry, obviously using my words, all those kinds of things. But there are also things that I'm like accustomed to, right? Like it's not really something that's out of the blue, out of the norm. This is kind of just my regular flow, but just being more intentional with it, because I'm definitely thinking at this early stage, this could possibly go somewhere. We'll see. And so, our competitiveness is kicking in. We're talking crap, talking about who's going to win at an air hockey event, right? And so we decided to schedule the first date to be at an arcade. Okay, we kind of trying to figure out which one to go to, but we ended up going to a spot. I won't necessarily say the name, but we went to the spot and we had a whole, quick little maybe hour and a half date before she had already made plans with friends to go for a dinner. So I believe it was like a birthday dinner that night she was celebrating with. But she made time for your boy to kick it in that first hour, a little hour and a half. And we had a blast. I mean, that was probably the fastest time I can recall spending time with somebody. Like, I couldn't believe that time it already came and went. From the time that we pulled up into the parking lot, we greeted one another. We was ready. We was already talking crap going into the door. We were just talking about interests, talking about what we do on the daily, workout regimens, all that good stuff. Right. And so we get in there. I remember this crazy because I actually was getting ready to put my card in the kiosk. And I forget how much it was. That's right. I think I had typed in the amount. I think it was or I clicked the amount. It was like 300 or something like that. She slapped my hand away. I was like, oh, snap. Because I didn't realize, because I thought I was putting in $30. If you put like 3000, you know what I'm saying? Like, it should automatically add a decimal. Maybe some places do it, some places don't. This one clearly didn't. And so I thought that was funny. But we adjusted it, right? $30 on the card. We ain't need nothing crazy. We weren't going to be here for a long time. But we were just going to have some fun. We played basketball. We played skee ball. All that good stuff. That, by the way, I must admit, your boy got washed up. I ain't even gonna hold you. I got washed up, like board washing. Kind of like how the Chiefs got cooked this past Super Bowl. Yeah, that was kind of me in that whole setup. And we got to the air hockey. It was some close games. I think there was a game we played where it went to how if you play long enough and you expire on the minutes, but you don't finish the game, it just stopped moving. The air hockey little slider cup just is done. Score is a score. I think one of those games was that. It was a rough time. I know we played like a little bit of cup ball, things like that. But fast forward, the date was awesome. The date was phenomenal. We followed up. And we had already in the parking lot had made decisions like, hey, we're going to do this again. We're going to do this again. We were trying to put some things together. She's out in the field working. She had just graduated that summer. And I'm finishing up my degree, finishing up my undergrad degree. I believe I was in the second to last semester of my time in college after pursuing a religion degree. So, I just had my regular and wasn't really doing a whole lot outside of school. And at the time, even creating content. And so fast forward, we have some great conversations in between, talking about a litany of things. And it's kind of interesting because I believe after that first date we had, this is kind of where things start taking a little bit of a turn. And it was really, looking back, of course, I'm going to make sense of all this, but just giving you some accurate journey throughout this entire process. I start to notice that things are kind of taking a turn, right? We're not texting as frequent, as often, talking as often, and at the time as even I would have liked. As we're just still in the process of getting to know each other and really starting to see what could be available. And if this is something that's actually moving for real. Now, again, I'm moving with great intentions, right, from jump, making my intentions pretty clear on what I'm looking for, what I'm after, and being intentional with those things, down to the messaging, down to all these kinds of things. So I'm the type of guy at this point in my life. Again, this is the first time going. I'm sending prayers and text messages. You know what I'm saying? I send about like 2 or 3 of them. I'm doing check-ins, saying what's up, giving words of encouragement, just doing all the things that I guess in a lot of ways, looking back on it, I kind of thought in a way like, yeah, this is just how you move. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is just how you operate. Now, granted, this is still me at the same time, right? I'm pretty authentic in this space, but then there's also those parts where it's like, yeah, I just want to be sure I'm covering my ground. You know what I'm saying? Doing all the right things and being sure that whatever I'm doing, I'm able to sustain it, right? So I'm really, really being intentional and thoughtful in those spaces. And so we don't have our next date. Let's see, that first one was in September. We don't have our next hangout or date until I believe it was, I want to say it was October. October or early November, one of the two. And the next day was we went back to the arcade. Okay, we went to another arcade. This time she came out to me. I went out to her the first time, drove out to her spot or her local area, which I believe it was like maybe 10, 15 minutes away from where she actually lived. And then she came back over to my space, where I lived in the local area. Of course, we're not going over each other's houses. We're honoring each other's boundaries and things of that sort. That wasn't even a thought. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm not moving with that type of energy of trying to go over people's houses early on. Like, bro, I'm still trying to get to know you. You know what I'm saying? I don't expect you to trust me in such a degree. So let's just keep it cool, calm, and collected, my G. You know what I'm saying? Let's just get to know each other and have a ball. And so we get there. The second date, again, the conversations aren't as frequent, aren't as often. But when we do engage in conversation, it's cool. You know what I'm saying? At least, again, from my eyes and from my experience, we're asking each other great relevant questions, strengths and weaknesses, talking to each other about faith, what we're learning, our perspectives, all those kinds of things, just in and out in between. Again, being very, very intentional in this space. And so the second day happens, cool. It's in my eyes, a repeat of the first date that we had. Obviously, not necessarily in the scoreboard because your boy picked it up. You know what I'm saying? I got my stuff together. I started winning games. I started doing the thing. And it was cool. It was cool. We actually stepped out of that arcade. And I ain't gonna lie, I didn't really think that deep afterwards. Now that I think about it, my planning wasn't really the greatest. And so, we were kind of looking at some areas to go to next, and we discovered that there was a boba tea spot right around the corner. We actually walked the campus a little bit. This is back at I live near the college campus that I attended. And so that was kind of the next stop. We kind of walked a little bit around the campus. And then, of course, a little bit off campus was where the boba tea was. And so that was my first time trying it. It was phenomenal, by the way. I forgot what I got. I know I had some like pineapple in there somewhere along the way. I forgot what kind of drink I got. But she introduced me to that, and it was phenomenal. It was a good drink. Enjoyed it. And we just had some good conversation, some really insightful conversation. I kind of started talking about goals, 5-year plans. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Any kind of goals in faith, relationships, your health, your economic status. What are you trying to do? What are you pursuing? Even intentional questions based on information I was receiving from conversations, relationship with parents, how that has played a role into who she is today, all those kinds of things. So these are some really intentional conversations at that time that I feel I'm investing in. And so we have that date. The answers are given. Very thoughtful, very exciting, and intentional. And it was all around. Just really enjoyed it. And so the second day happens. It concludes. We're good. And so the same thing is kind of present in the text messaging, the communication that we were having in between that date and then the third date. And so it's not every day. It's not consistent every day or even every other day. There were times where, you would go a couple days without hearing from her or, just hearing from each other. And so we would hit each other up, check in, say what's up, how's your day, how's your week, catching up a little bit, having some deeper conversation, perhaps picking up on the last message that was sent. We did have in between this first duration of our time together, a couple FaceTime calls that weren't too crazy. But again, it was cool. Just great conversation. She's working, traveling, doing her thing, killing the game. Again, I'm hanging back at school and finishing up my undergrad degree. So fast forward, we go to this third date, and I'm gonna speed this up a little bit so that way I can just really make sure I fit in a lot of the takeaways and thoughts of the entire experience. But we go on the third date, and the third date is good. It was a movie date. All right. She actually comes back to where I'm at this time because I didn't have my car. Okay. I was driving a car. I was kind of going back and forth from my parents' house to the apartment. At this point in time, the car is back at the parents' house. And so I don't have access to it. Right. I don't have access to it. And I'm like maybe 35, 40 minutes away. And so on this particular night that the movie night takes place, my brother is gone. You know what I'm saying? He's driving. So that just kind of leaves me with like just a plan to Uber. You know what I'm saying? Nothing crazy. The movie theater is like 10 minutes up the road. Ain't nothing crazy. I'll Uber out there. You know what I'm saying? She'll just let me know when she gets over there. Now, granted, as I'm explaining this, I would prefer it to be, hey, I'd come out to where she is every time, right? Like that's just the kind of person I am. And what I would rather happen. However, that wasn't the case, right? And I wanted to be able to make sure that anytime we had the opportunity to connect, especially because the dates were kind of few and far in between, especially early on. And then, of course, with her work schedule and her availability, I was like, yeah, I kind of really want to just capitalize on that every opportunity that we have and not really miss anything. Yeah, especially if it's just because I don't have my car. She has stated before she enjoys driving and that she didn't really have a problem doing that based on our communications. So I was like, cool, okay, well, as hard as it might have been for me to like really roll with that, I just stuck with it. I was like, okay, no, we can just let it happen. Let's go. Let's see what's up. And so that third date comes about. We had our communications. We were just trying to figure out what to do. The new Black Panther had just dropped. And so we were like, man, let's just keep it simple. Let's go to the movies. I'll reserve the tickets, reserve the seats. Granted, when we got there, it didn't even matter. Like the movie theater was pretty empty. But I did it anyway, right? I reserved the seats, reserved the tickets. Went ahead and got some gifts as well. Words of affirmations and gifts were a part of her love language. We had that conversation after the second date. So I took note of that, right? So your boy's taking mental notes, learning along the way, and being sure that I'm on my P's and Q's and on my best behavior. Okay. And so we get there, we have that movie date, we see Black Panther. I think she rates it like a 9. I rated it a 10 due to the ending. If you haven't seen Black Panther 2, that is, yeah, you got to check that out. That movie was pretty good. And, we had our jokes, had our laughs, gave her a gift. She enjoyed it. It was a TCU pullover and a candle. I'm forgetting a scented candle. It wasn't her favorite, but it was a candle that I thought she would enjoy. Just because they didn't have her favorite in stock where I went to go look. And so what's crazy is when I was buying this gift, it was interesting that a thought came across my mind. Okay. And I was thinking to myself, like, okay, what if like this doesn't go as planned? Like what if I go into this store, I spent all this time finding a gift, gathering the things that she likes, just a couple. I didn't overspend, didn't splurge, but just was thoughtful, and then obviously in the process, getting family members some gifts and things like that. And I wanted to just be a blessing to them with through just certain purchases, some candles and stuff, just thinking of them. So I was like, man, like what if she don't give nothing back? What if you go out your way to do all this and she don't ever talk again? Like this is the last time you see her. Are you okay with getting this gift? Like, are you good with it? And I ain't gonna lie, man, when that thought came across my mind, I had to sit in the car for a second. I'm in the parking spot in Dick's Sporting Goods. And I had to sit there for a second. Like, dang, that's such a good question. And it was really a question aimed at touching my heart, like really dealing with my heart posture towards why I'm even going out of my way to do all these things. She's not expecting it, at least to my knowledge. And this wasn't even something she asked for. And so you're completely going out of your will to do this. And there's no guarantee that on the other end of you giving this gift that things are going to go the way you're hoping and wanting them to go. So are you still going to be appreciative? And long story short, I still go in there. I get the gift. I make up my mind that, yeah, I'm good because, and this is literally what I thought about in the parking spot. It's something that I've reiterated ever since then in explaining the story to other people. It's just that the purpose of me getting the gift wasn't really for me to get something in return. It was actually just to be moving in love in all kinds of ways. And hold on to that because this is going to matter as we come to the conclusion of the story. And so we have the third date. She gets the gift. She enjoys it. She appreciates it. She voices her appreciation for it. We enjoy the movie. And, obviously we go to her car, waiting in her car while the Uber's coming through. And I get in the Uber. We go home. Of course I ask out of politeness, like, is there going to be a next time? She's like, yes, of course. Why wouldn't it? Right. So in my mind, I'm really thinking like things are going well, 3 dates. All of them have been well, in my opinion, have been fun. We've been able to be competitive with one another. We've had amazing conversations with one another, very deep, and dare I say, even closely intimate conversations with one another. From faith to past relationships to past experiences to any strengths and weaknesses, just learning so much more about who we are as individuals and if this even makes sense for us to even move in a specific direction. And so the third date happens in December, right? So between the second date and the third date, it's definitely been 30 days or more. Okay. Again, dealing with the availability, dealing with the work, the busyness, the scheduling, right? All these different things. And so just, when the time was available, making sure that it happened. And it did 3 times. So your boy, this is around, I want to say this is after Christmas. I believe this is after Christmas. She had just mentioned that, she had some work. She was traveling to some different spaces. It was really cool, very supportive of that whole situation and everything taking place there in her occupation. She was killing it, doing her thing. I mean, just ranking up and leveling up. It was awesome. And so she is gone out of town with family, visiting them for Christmas and things like that. And so I decided to send a message. I forgot what date it was that I sent this message, but it definitely was in the later parts of December. I believe it was around Christmas, either before or after. And I was just being very intentional. I said, hey, definitely want to reach out to you. And I said it paraphrasing, of course, not word for word, but hey, reaching out to you. And I'm really, really appreciative of the time we spent. And I just really want to be intentional about where we're going, what we're doing, and what this is, right? And so, hey, listen, I'm curious to know what you see this as, and basically ask 3 questions. What do you need from me in this next season? How can we both benefit one another moving into this next season? And man, I'm forgetting the third question. I ain't gonna lie to you, but I feel like there was 3 questions I asked in relation to basically what are we, where are we going, and what are we doing here, and how can we serve each other best in this next upcoming season. And so I sent that message, right? And it was a few days, no response. And at this time, like, my mind is definitely racing, right? And it was racing prior to. In those moments that days would go by and I wasn't really hearing from her. A lot of the anxious attachment is showing up in me. And it's being exposed through her inactivity, which is so interesting. And your boy has so many journals that I have written at the time. And then, of course, I processed after all of this that helped me piece it together that not only anxious attachment was going crazy, but it was rough. And so anxious attachment is going crazy. In my mind, I'm like, yo, what's going on? What's happening? And, all the thoughts are running through like, dang, am I not doing well? Am I second fiddle? Am I like, does this mean no? What's happening? I'm just like, my mind's going crazy. I'm just assuming the worst, in all honesty. And so, long story short, the message isn't responded to. And so I went ahead and sent another one. This was after, a few days later, just, hey, following up with the last message. Not sure if you got it, this, then the third. Expressed and communicated that, hey, I'm not upset in any way, shape, or form. Please don't receive a message like that. I'm just following up, making sure that you got it. She responded, wanted some time to think on it. She was with family. She had went to dinner with some family members of hers and things of that sort. And so obviously, after she got back to me, I was able to kind of come back to a resting place. But prior to, my mind is just spinning. So like I'm behind the scenes, mind is going crazy. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. And I'm thinking the worst is happening. Like, dang, bro, that's it. She ain't messing with me. It ain't it. This, that, and the third. So she gets back to me. Now this is on New Year's Day. This is so crazy to me. This is on New Year's Day. I'll never forget it. In the same very room, I am sitting on the floor with my laptop that's connected to the Ethernet cable that's connected to the router, because at this time I'm getting some edits done in this internship that I'm participating in. And so definitely wanted to get some clips downloaded, get them prepared and edited. Everything's moving slow. So I'm not really thinking much of it. Obviously, I'm excited to hear back from her and anticipating to hear back from her soon. And so I believe on this same day, I believe it's January 1st, she sends a message. It's back to back. It's like bing, bing, right? So in my mind, like, oh, man, the first thing that came to my mind is like, dang, she had this in her notes. She definitely been thinking on this. And so I don't know how this is going to go. I really don't know how this is going to go. And so I opened the text message, and I'm one of those readers that can skim through a message to get to the main point pretty fast without having to read the entirety of it. And so as I'm skimming through it, I'm noticing the flow of it, and I notice where it ends, and my heart just sinks to my stomach. I couldn't believe what I was reading. And my stomach, not my stomach, was just in knots. And as I'm reading it, it expresses how dope of a time it was to get to know me, my personality, beating me and the arcade games, so on and so forth. And basically just coming to the conclusion that she could not see this moving towards anything romantic. Like she couldn't see it to the point of romance. And as I'm reading it, man, eyes are like teary-eyed at this point, right? It was a real gut punch. Like in full transparency and vulnerability. This is my first time actually experiencing rejection, actually experiencing somebody telling me they don't feel the same and they don't want me in the same way as I've expressed I was interested in one of them. I have never been this far. I have never taken it to this level and this desire of commitment to say, yo, I am moving with great intentions here and I'm doing all the right things. Like there's just no way that this doesn't go the way that I'm anticipating it. And lo and behold, in that message, it happens right there. And so I'm shook, like so bothered by this message that I go the entire day without responding. Just because I really didn't know what to say. My emotions are all over the place, very unstable. I go outside, it's cold, it's foggy, and I'm walking around the neighborhood. I gotta take me a walk. And in this walk, I am expressing my grievances at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like I was in such shock that 3 dates go well. There was no, in my mind at the time, no real sign that this was going awry, that this really wasn't what I was thinking it was leading to. I'm even going as far as throughout this entire process, I'm obviously diving into my Bible. I'm praying like, Lord, this could be it. And a lot of times, and I'm gonna be honest, a lot of my prayers were filled with me just talking, a lot of talking, a lot of me expressing how, Lord, I think this could be the move. I think this could actually work. Imagine me being like my first actual go at a relationship actually goes right, actually goes well, goes as planned. And I'm bringing Bible scriptures into this thing. There was nothing you could have told me, even as I'm checking in with coaches and mentors around me. I'm bringing up her name in these spaces because I want these guys to hold me accountable. I want these guys to know what I'm involved in, what I'm seeing, am I tripping, this, that, and the third. And, even then I had mentors at the time around me who were reassuring me that, hey, like, not only is it a process, but you got to be sure that even though this is something you're seeing, you have to actually ask the question if it's something she's seeing. Is this something that she's looking at this in that way? Is even though you're ready, even though you are at a space that you're saying, hey, I'm ready to go all in, is she at that space? And, you can't really force it. You can't strong arm it. It's just not going to work. And so, I go back to these same mentors and coaches after receiving this message because I'm flabbergasted. I mean, I'm blown away. Flabbergasted is crazy, right? In 2025, but I'm blown away at what I'm receiving. I'm blown away at what I'm looking at. I can't believe I'm staring at it. And my mind just goes to so many different places. But you said this. You said, I seem like your kind of person. You said, these are the things that you saw in me. And then you said you enjoyed the time that we spent. When I said, is there going to be another time? You said, yes, of course. Why wouldn't there be, right? Like all these different statements that are running through my mind from previous conversations we had that to me was informing me that okay, this is going in a really good direction, a favorable direction, perhaps even a romantic direction. And so I'm replaying all the dates. I'm replaying all the moments. I'm looking at even down to, man, did I hold the door for her enough? Did I show up on time enough? Was I late all the time? Was there something that I might have said during the dates that maybe would have thrown her off, maybe would have reminded her of a previous relationship she had, and we just never got the time to communicate it? Like, man, was there something that I did wrong? Was there something I did wrong? You know, in the phone calls and the conversations, all those kinds of things that we shared. Man, was there something I could have done different? Maybe if I was the dream guy, you know, maybe if I was the dream guy, I wouldn't be getting treated like this. I wouldn't be getting thrown to the side and treated like I'm nothing right here. Like I just wouldn't be thrown away like that. Like none of these moments would have meant little to nothing here. You know, man, I wish that there was, you know, I was really looking at myself in such a different way. Like, man, I just wish I was better. I wish I was enough. I wish that I was enough to be that decision for her. You know, why wasn't I enough? You know, even questions like that are coming across my mind. And so, you know, I'm hitting up my coaches and mentors around me, two in particular, that really helped me process through this in the first few days and weeks. You know, I'm coming into the calls, I'm real somber, real down. There were plenty of days where tears are flowing, plenty of days where I'm literally grieving the fact that what I wish was there is no longer available. What I hoped was there is no longer there. I am going to church in worship sessions, just bawling, right? Because I still can't believe, like, doing all the right things ended up in this result. Like, no matter how many relationship advisories or advices or gems or nuggets I was given, it couldn't have possibly prepared me for what I'm feeling currently. It just felt like such a curveball, felt like it was out of place, felt like it was out of nowhere, didn't know what to do with it. And so, you know, talking to the coaches, talking to the mentors, and them just pouring into me, encouraging me, nurturing me, helping me, it was so needed. So needed, because it was the right things I needed to hear. And it helped me continuously put into perspective what I was experiencing, and at the same time giving me room to feel what I was feeling. Because your boy was hurt. Your boy was crushed. And it was just something I wasn't expecting. And to top it all off, if you really want to know the one song I was listening to that I actually had to tell myself I couldn't listen to no more because it just wasn't helpful, it was Drake, Feeling No Ways. Now, I know Drake ain't really in the best light right now, right? But that's now, okay? Like in 2022, early 2023, the rap beef wasn't here, okay? So, you know, Feeling No Ways from the Views album, yo, that thing was... I had never felt like a song speak so closely to what I was feeling in that way. And I'm sure there's probably a plethora of songs. And I would love to hear in the comment section below if you've experienced rejection and breakup, you know, rejection and or breakups or anything like that. What was the go-to song that you listen to? Because it's very important what you listen to in those spaces. You're at your most vulnerable. And there's anything and everything has a capacity to really speak to you, to encourage you to do things that either you naturally wouldn't do, or that you feel like you want to do in order to cope with the pain that you're dealing with, right? And so it's super important that when you're in those spaces, what are you listening to? And at the time, yeah, I turned on Drake, and I had a lot of songs that I could have listened to. That was the one that I had on repeat. The room was dark. I couldn't think straight. It was rough. And you would have thought like I had just got out of a long-term relationship. I was on my way to marriage. None of that happened, right? There was nobody on either side that made a verbal commitment to anything. And it was all just things that I had drew up in my mind, destinations that I wanted the relationship to land on, all the things that I was hoping for that ultimately just didn't come to pass. And that's where a lot of the disappointment came from. That's where a lot of the failed expectations came from. Hitting rock bottom and just bursting into tears in so many different facets came from. And so mentors reminding me that, hey, man, like, it's not you, man. You know, it's not you. You did everything you were supposed to. It's just she's not there. She's not there. She's not ready. She's not willing. she's not in a space where she can actually make that decision. And it has less to do with you, man. It has so much less to do with you. And so them pouring into me through the word, reminding me of God's word, of course, throughout this entire process was huge. And really was encouraging me to get through such a tough time, because your boy definitely, like I said, just had plenty of days where I was crying. I was tears. I had literally interviewed my emotions. I'm journaling in this time. And it was crazy, because I think a huge intricate part to all this detail before moving forward is that it was the first time that I had actually experienced like, oh wow, like Manosphere and Red Pill actually sounds good right now. Like real talk. I had never in my life thought of it. I mean, at the time I was looking deep into it. It was still something that was surfacing on the scene. So many people were posting about it, talking about it. And I had never in my life experienced the desire to lean into it more than that moment. And in my mind, I'm like, nah, bro, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense why men decide to just go rogue. And they're like, yo, I tried the whole nice guy thing. I tried the whole, pedestal thing, or I tried the whole kind, gentle guy thing, getting the flowers and the kind compliments and picking her up and taking her places. Now, of course, I didn't do any of the picking up at the time. If anything, I met her somewhere, or she, came my direction. But, it was like, yeah, I mean, I did all the nice things. I did all the kind guy gesture things, paid for all the meals, all the, all the experiences or the dates and all those kinds of things. And then I got nothing in return. And so it was so easy in that space to just go in and just be like, yeah, bro, I'm done. I'm throwing in the towel. This whole nice guy thing, bro, that's dead. I'm not doing that no more. I'm finna go crazy. I'm gonna be the guy that everybody hates, but for some reason gives their body to. Like, I'm finna be that dude. And it was so easy. I won't lie to you that those thoughts were very tempting in that time. But thankfully, because I was connected to such a close-knit community where I was able to express that and communicate that, the longer that we were putting words to it, the more that didn't even make sense, right? I was able to pull out of that emotional downfall and get into a space of logic and reasoning and say, nah, man, like, that don't even make sense. That's not even a reflection of Christ. That's not even a reflection of who God is. And because we desire to honor God in everything, even in the moments where it hurts the most, like, I don't get the privilege of just throwing in the towel because something didn't go the way I wanted to, because the prayers I was praying didn't really happen the way I wanted them to, where I was really wanting this relationship to actually turn into something. And it didn't, And so, wow. I mean, we really can go on and on all that point, and harboring over the grieving experience of experiencing that first rejection. But if there's one thing that happened that was also a turning point in this entire relationship, is that I went back. Yeah. Your boy got rejected and went back. I went back. And when I went back, I was encouraged to go back in some way by one of my coaches, who was giving some interesting perspective, even from his own relationship and marriage. And of course, he was just giving some nuance, just some things to consider. He wasn't really saying like I had to. He was just giving me great feedback and great thoughts to just take into consideration. Ultimately, the choice was mine. And, I think based on that, he was like, man, listen, bro, like, you're kind of just, if you don't go back and ask and get some clarity and things like that, I mean, nothing changes. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're still in this funk. You're still in this pain. If you were to ask for clarity and she doesn't give it, hey, you know what I'm saying? Like, at least there's something and you're able to kind of continue to move forward, man. But just living in this space of fog and confusion, I mean, if you have access to the direct source, why not? You know what I'm saying? The worst thing that she can do is say no, and you move forward from there. And so it took me a few weeks. I really wasn't ready for it at the time. When I first got rejected, I was like, man, I don't think there's anything she could actually say that would make this feel better. And, as we continue moving forward, I ended up gaining the desire to, man. I ain't even gonna lie to y'all. Like, I'm gonna be so honest in this right now. I'm just be real vulnerable. Because in this space, as I'm trying to navigate what I'm gonna do, amidst the tears, amidst the questions, amidst interviewing my emotions and journaling out my frustrations and really trying to pinpoint why and really trying to get an answer on why, because that was the biggest thing that clouded over my mind. I mean, even to the point where I remember driving to church and I said, man, I woke up, I journaled it. And I said, man, I woke up this morning and I was thinking to myself, that there's one of two reasons why this happened. One, because she didn't want me. Or two, because she just wasn't really in a position herself to actually make a commitment. And I'm making this more about me and I'm not in the right for doing so. Like, it's extremely selfish of me to make this all about me and who I was or wasn't. And I'm the reason why this didn't work out, those kinds of things. And so I've literally been doing the work in this whole entire exchange emotionally, and feeling every ounce of pain and asking questions to the emotions I'm feeling and really pursuing it there. And so, long story short, as I'm doing all that, I even fasted for a day, y'all. I was like, yo, Lord, I need to really know if I should go back for an answer. Like, I just thought me doing a quick little fast for that one day was just going to make sense. I was like, Lord, I'm going to hear him clearly. He's going to give me the answer. He's going to tell me what it is directly, and I'm going to do it. And I don't even remember hearing anything that day. I'm going to be so honest. Like, I didn't hear nothing. I did that whole fast, hoping that God would just give me a direct answer and tell me what to do, so I didn't have to make a decision, so I didn't have to really think on it, so I didn't have to really, just weigh my options and just move forward with whatever I chose. And so, I ended up texting my mentor at the time, who's still my mentor. I say mentor at the time. He's still my mentor, coach. Man, love him. And I was like, yo, I just gotta know. I just gotta go get the clarity. I just gotta have a conversation with her. I initially asked, like, man, because he was one of the people, the main person actually that was really pushing just the perspective of seeing people who would go back in downward spiral. And not only would it have been worse than the rejection, but people who tend to go back to places that really just was a no from jump or no as a conclusion, just downward spiral. They don't ever really recover, and they don't really learn how to recover because they just continuously fall. He just didn't want that to happen for me. And both coaches and everybody who gave me insight that I trusted in that space meant well in what they said, and I took it all in. And being able to weigh that and ultimately made my own decision, despite all that. And the question I raised to him was like, yo, why can't I go back? Like, why can't I go back? Like, what is so wrong about asking a question? What is so wrong about getting clarity? What is so wrong about asking why? And he was like, man, look, bro, nothing is wrong about it. I just want to be sure that if you do it, you understand what you're stepping into. You understand like what's at stake, and you can take the answer, whatever it is. He said, so if you're going to do it, hey, listen, bro, get on the phone with her. Get on the phone with her, be direct with her, and let her know what's up. Let her know what's on your heart. Ask the questions. Get all you need out, man. So that way, whatever is at the end of this, you're able to move forward. And if that's what you feel you need, man, I'm behind you either way. So I appreciated that so much, and I feel like that gave me permission to do it, or at least help release me to go do it. And that was really what I was waiting for and asking that in the long run. And so I sent a message. We hadn't talked much after that initial message she sent. I know I had sent a message back like at midnight the next day. Obviously letting her know I received the message. I appreciate it. I said something towards the end too, like just always remember, something about God's love or something along those lines, just saying something at the end there. We had our few conversations in between there, a couple check-ins here and there that she mentioned, or she reached out and then I mentioned and I reached out, or something along those lines. But this one was the real deal. And I was like, hey, listen, like, you got an opportunity to get on the phone for just a few moments, sometime this week. She gave me a date and time. I said, bet, let's make it happen. So your boy goes back. I believe this is on like a Wednesday night. We get on the phone and, we chop it up a little bit per usual. You know what I'm saying? And then I just go dive right into it. I just get right into the mix. I'm like, yo, listen, so, I'm definitely not interested in changing your mind with your decision on everything that you mentioned, just not seeing it to the level of romance and those kinds of things. And I was just so curious as to what led you to that decision. We had a very, very mature conversation about it all. And she was just letting me know, like, hey, yeah, I just don't really think I'm in a position to date intentionally. And I don't really want to drag anybody down into that space, even with my uncertainty, and things of that sort. And so she made that really clear. And then I went ahead and asked a question. I said, okay, cool. What do you think about just like building and waiting? What's your thoughts on that? Like, I'm really trying to like really not let this go. Like that was probably the biggest thing in that whole entire callback. And, she gave some thought to it and she responded with a question, which I thought was a beautiful question. She was like, hey, yeah, so I'm just curious, like, and not to like be all girly or anything. That was her response. But she said, you know, like, why do you want to stay? And such an interesting question that I didn't really put a whole lot of thought into necessarily the framework of the question itself. But I ended up responding. And I said, man, like out of all the females that I've met, you're the one that I've like really connected with. I don't think I've really met anybody quite like you. I really enjoyed the way that she thought. Her intelligence was amazing. She really had a lot going for her. She's pursuing something. She's going after something. She's very intentional. Of course, she's a believer, right? That's first and foremost. Like I don't even think that's in the question. I'm not pursuing anybody who's not a believer, right? Like that's just a waste of time. I think our conversations in connection, faith-based wise, faith-wise was amazing. And I just love the brevity of conversation that we can have. We can joke and be competitive. But we can also have our serious conversations and dive into some really, really great talks that are emotionally stimulating and very helpful, very insightful, very intellectual to say the least. And so those are the things that I pointed out in the midst of that and explaining it to her. And, then we kind of just mapped out a little bit of what the future could look like, right? So if we're building and waiting, okay, so like, let's lay out some expectations then, right? Because we were, and I remember her saying this exact thing as I'm saying this to you guys. She was like, yeah, I just want to be sure that like, you're not coming from one direction and I'm coming from another. Because she has a history of dealing with people who just kind of like left off bad terms. Things didn't go right and they just kind of started cutting up and was acting completely out of pocket to a certain extent. And so, and I say certain extent to like the upteenth degree. Let me just say it like that. Okay. And so, her asking that, there was a lot of things that I was kind of thinking through in the back of my mind where I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I mean, being able to handle that appropriately, not being sure I'm adding to any potential scars that are possibly still healing at the time. And so I was like, yeah, no, I get you. I 1000% understand you. And I told her, I said, hey, be where you are. You know what I'm saying? Now, did I really mean that at the beginning? I think that's something that I learned to be okay with, but it wasn't really something that maybe I initially meant as much as I said it in the moment, because truth be told, I mean, there were still some efforts that I was giving after that call. Where I thought I was like, yeah, man, I'm back in the boat. Like all of a sudden a smile is back on my face. I'm brightened up. We didn't put a game plan together on how we're going to move about this and just kind of continue to just get to know each other, and things of that sort, in terms of calls, text messages, what to expect down to the bone, down to the T, what hangout sessions and opportunities may look like each month and checking in there. And, just kind of setting some boundaries and tones there, right? On what to expect from each other communication wise. And so beyond that call, and feeling better, feeling like, okay, we're back in the saddle. We're good. Ain't none of that go down. Ain't not a lick of that go down like we had even discussed. All of them pretty much fell through. We got on the phone, I want to say maybe one other time in that space. And this is all at the top of 2023, right? So we have the call in February after January, the beginning of the year, when that message comes through. We have the call in February, and then from February on through the rest of the year, right? This is ongoing from February to December of 2023. Like none of that really happens, right? None of what we initially got on the phone and discussed takes place. We got on the phone one time. We had some pretty good conversation at one time. I would say actually maybe twice. We got on the phone maybe twice in that brevity. Maybe I think it might have been twice. We had some really good conversation. Just about anything and everything, from sports related to personal struggles. I remember there was a time actually at the end of the call that we shared in February as we were as my goal was just to get back on track, right? My goal in getting in that call was like, hey, if she throws me under the bus or if this goes in a positive direction, I get clarity, I win, and I'm good, right? I'm free to move forward. And my whole perspective was like, yeah, I just need to know why so that I can move forward. And obviously that's a struggle in and of itself. And we're going to wrap up. Really just, again, hang with me. I know this has been a long story. We're getting to the end here and we're going to make sense of all this because I think there's probably a part 2 of this that could possibly be made as we talk about a lot of the lessons learned. But I just want to give you guys the context and history to all this because this is my first rodeo, man. It's my first go around at actually intentionally dating somebody. And so the hurt and the pain, the grief, the confusion, all these things that I experienced were raw, real. And there was not a lick of pods, a lick of teachings, a lick of nothing that actually felt like prepared me for what I experienced that I look back on and I'm entirely grateful. I'm entirely grateful. And so we get there. This is after that call. We have a couple calls in between. We hang out a total of throughout the course of 2023. After that call, I believe we connect 3 other times. Yep. So throughout the course of the year, and again, it's very loose expectations. We know where things are. We're not dating or anything official. We never did, right? We were just meeting and courting one another. Obviously, in the first rejection go around, when it first happened, in the first 3 months, I definitely was moving with great intention, was hoping the best, was hoping for the outcome. I know why I'm here, right? I'm looking for a girl. I'm looking for somebody to just start doing life with in that aspect. Now this time around, it's more of like, I'm cool with where it is and I'm allowing it to be what it can be and taking my time. But I'm going to be honest, there's still that desire that I have for this to go the distance, to go the long haul, And so obviously based on the conversations that we share that are plethora, and the combined time that we've known each other at this point in time, we got into a lot of deep conversations that informed me of what I assumed was kind of happening behind the scenes in terms of maybe delayed responses, the inconsistency of the communication, the times where, we would go 2 weeks without talking to each other. And then again, there's my anxious attachment, like picking up and kicking in again, right? I'm concerned. What's going on? What am I doing wrong? What am I not doing enough of? What can I be doing better? Maybe if I was the perfect guy, this wouldn't be happening, so on and so forth. And so throughout that year of 2023, we visit each other in person about 3 different times. 1 for dinner or 2 dinners, and then we went to church together, right? So the first dinner happens in May. And this is actually interesting because the day of the dinner was actually the anniversary of my oldest brother's passing, as he passed in, 2006 when I was a kid. I was 6 years old, he was 10, passed in his sleep. And so I remember my mom was texting me, was like, hey, your dad could use some company. It's, days like this are really tough. Just anniversary of the passing of obviously their son, my brother. And so I was like, yeah, I get you. I'll definitely be back to spend time. This is like the only time and window I get an opportunity to do this, just due to busy schedules. And so cool. Obviously those decisions were made and I go. And the dinner was phenomenal, by the way. We went at, what was it? Papa Delta Blues Smokehouse. It was phenomenal food, by the way. I didn't even eat all of it, but it was pretty good. And so we had really good conversation. We talked a lot about, some thoughts and lessons that we were getting from church that we were attending to, talking about singleness. How do you maximize your singleness while you're dating? we even talked about certain conversations and raising questions like, man, what if you're wrong? What if you're wrong in your choice? How do you bounce back and recover from that? And really just diving deep into some really good conversations that I thought were really relatable to, where we were at that time. Not even necessarily with each other, although that is what I'm thinking in my mind, but just more so of where we were as individuals. And so obviously that dinner goes great. I'm coming back to the group of guys. I'm kind of sharing some of the tea in terms of like, yo, what I'm saying? This is what she said, and the guy that she's looking for, and the kind of guy that she would want to kind of navigate and do life with, those kinds of things. I'm thinking I'm fitting the description, I'm fitting the bill. You know what I'm saying? I'm really thinking the best of myself in that whole exchange. So that's the first date, right? Or the first time that we've hung out since the rejection that happened in January, the call that happened in February. We hang out for the first time in person since December of 2022 and May of 2023. Then we have another opportunity in July. July of 2023 rolls around. This is where I'm invited to go to church. Out of curiosity, she has a message out of curiosity. You down to go to church? It's bad. You know what I'm saying? I've never been to Social Dallas. She actually introduced me to Social Dallas. Shout out to Pastor Robert Dude. That's my YouTube pastor. I'm so excited to get there, by the way. It's gonna be a phenomenal time when I do. But we go to Social Dallas. Amazing message at the time that actually was crazy. Oh my goodness. This is all, and there's so many parts that plays into this that I'm thinking about, because throughout this entire time, God has really been working on my heart. Right. And I really think he was, throughout the duration, slowly preparing me for basically how the year would end, and basically how this relationship would ultimately come to its conclusion. Really, I spent every day throughout this time journaling and prayer. Questions would come up like, man, what happened? What are you going to do if she leaves? Where are you going to go if she leaves? What are you going to do? How are you going to feel? If this doesn't really work out like you think it will the second go round. Really challenging my perspective on love. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, and this is really pivotal to the story as well, because obviously we have our 2 dates. We go to social. Okay, so I'm all over the place. Let me slow down. We go to Social Dallas in July. Great time. Worship, message. It was awesome. The whole time I'm low-key listening to the message. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, man, if only she gets this, will she see things my way? Let me tell you how selfish I was really thinking in my mind. There was a part of me that was really hoping that, like, as the message is being preached and it's just all about trusting God, taking a chance, and things of that sort, I'm really thinking in the back of my mind, like, man, I hope this girl is hearing this message the way I am, because I'm ready to go in. You know what I'm saying? I'm ready to take this leap. I hope she's willing to take the leap too. I'm just being honest, right? And it was at that time that I was really moving with a sense of projection and not actually taking the message in for what it was saying to me, and trying to convey that message to fit a specific narrative that I wanted to hear, that I hoped was fitting for me and what I wanted. And it was way off. And so, but we went to church, enjoyed that message, stayed for a little bit of worship afterwards. And then, we went to go grab some more boba tea. And then we walked around a little bit of a complex area, just had some really good conversations, some funny conversations, some laughs, talked about a few more, serious conversations that we were reflecting on with parents and relationships there and things of that sort. And then we went on our way, right? So we enjoyed our Sunday together. Obviously, we were like, hey, next time, anytime, hey, keep it in the loop. And so we don't see each other again until December. And then December is when everything ends. So before I get to finishing this story and then kind of giving some full contextual understandings to this, throughout this entire year of 2023, at this point, I have Huh. Throughout this time of 2023, I have really, my heart has really been worked on. I mean, tremendously. The anxious attachment that I was carrying is slowly, and I do mean crawling off of me. Um, I'm having to address some really hard questions in periods of journaling and reflecting. Like, what if this doesn't turn out the way I want to? What if the relationship never really happens? What if everything ends and the communication conversation ends tomorrow? What's going to happen? You know, I'm journaling in live time the emotions that I'm feeling, the anxiety that's building up in me at the fact that we hadn't talked and communicated and texted for a certain period of time. I'm talking about, the fear of the fact, oh man, this is really cute too, because this all stems back to other things that I experienced where I was ghosted. I was ghosted by a female that I was interested in at one point, like back in like 2019, 2018, something along those lines. And, even at that time, my emotions were pretty distraught. It was unexpected. The way that she turned up on me out of the blue, saying that I had overvalued her, all these different kinds of things. She called me a simp. That was really tough. At the time, that was a definite characteristic that was thrown around a lot to describe men who would just give anything to women. When in reality, I mean, I hadn't done nothing but like giving encouragement, um, loving, kind words, those kind of things. So that stuff still kind of bothered me at the time. And so there were overthinking thoughts that were happening at the time too. Like, oh, I don't want to do too much because I don't want to be seen as a simp. I don't want to be seen as doing too much. I don't want to be seen as that guy that's like just head over heels about this girl and willing to do anything and give up anything. I also didn't want to be the guy that I really want to reflect on this. Yeah, I guess I just didn't want to put myself in a position to where I was going to get hurt like that again, because that really jacked me up. And so the times that happened where the distance and communication was there, it really jacked me up, really jacked me up. And it really revealed that anxious attachment in me, because with that distancing and spacing, it only made me want to cling more, to what I wanted, to cling more to the final result, to cling more to her. In the essence, where I would send check-in messages, um, and was worried that if I stopped sending the messaging first, that then she's gonna think that, oh, this nigga's not worth my time. He not putting in no effort, this, that, and third. And then I would have my chance. And so a lot of ways my thought process is accumulated in the manner of, if I'm not on my P's and Q's, she's going to leave. And I was more afraid of her leaving than me being at peace. I was more afraid of her leaving and detaching and no longer having access to this relationship, to this girl that I thought was dope, I thought was amazing, I thought was in a lot of ways something that I legitimately prayed for. I remember creating a video, and one of the gifts, I did give her another set of gifts. At the first dinner we had in May of 2023, I recorded a whole YouTube video, like just expressing what the gift was. It was like a little jar of Bible verses of encouragement, sending to her. Of course, some of her favorite candies in there in that same bag as well, but just that little jar. And then I had a QR code. On the QR code was a video. Just me expressing like, yo, I'm willing to be patient, And in my mind, I'm thinking as I'm making this video, a lot of the stuff that I had been assuming at this time that, oh, like you're just really delaying and it's hard and it's challenging because of your past, because of things you've experienced. And so I get it. There's a need for me to really journey with you in this space, be patient and wait for you in this space. And so that was really a lot of my thinking. And it influenced me to really approach it in a way where like I started overlooking a lot of things, the delayed responses, not hearing from her for X amount of time, um, you know, even really overlooking, honestly, a lot of what I was really feeling, really convincing myself that, hey, yeah, I'm just here to be present. But in reality, I was really actually wanting to pursue a long-term relationship and really get to that goal and that end mark. I mean, even to the point where, there were times throughout that year where she had sent messages and was like, yeah, like really thought about it. And yeah, I still can't see anything romantically. And then, mentioning that maybe there was a subconscious fear and things like that. So like language like that is what was reminding me like, oh, okay, no, I just need to keep being patient, bro. Like she'll come around. And that whole time, my heart was just being worked on. I was really like learning how to love at a different level. And even though it was coming at the expense of me overlooking a lot of easy things, um, allowing my anxious attachment to run wild, not calling a thing, not acknowledging the relationship and connection for what it was, not acknowledging the behavior I was seeing for what it was. I mean, it did come at the expense of me overlooking all these things. And at the same time, I still found value in that whole entire journey looking back because I had learned to love at a greater level. I had learned to be okay with not needing somebody to be a certain way for me to continuously love them. And that's a huge challenge, especially in today's culture. Like us as men, like we really don't move like that. Like we really don't move like that. Like if a girl is not showing up or if somebody is not showing up in the way that they should be with regarding to the relationship and its standings and status, like we're quick. And I think not just men, but just people, we're quick to just be like, man, no, I'm good. They're not going to keep using me. They're not going to keep abusing me. I'm being a good guy here and they're not doing anything but walking all over me. So, I'm going to turn my good guy badge in and I'm going to go put on my bad boy clothes on. And I'll start talking to multiple women at once. And at least I'll get the reward of sex at the end. At least I'll get the reward of the relationship, but all at the expense of lacking character and integrity and thinking treating women like trash is the answer. I mean, that's what Manosphere and Red Pill oftentimes promote. No matter how many times I'm told, you got the wrong idea, bro. You don't know what you're talking about. Like, come on, man. Like the essence of you feeling good about yourself as a man comes at the expense of putting women down. That's never the answer. Like anytime you got to put somebody down in order to look good, you're in the wrong situation. You're in the wrong lane and you need some healing. And that's exactly what I had to do. I had to go through my own process of healing. That included the tears, that included the emotional interviews, that included having community and coaches to come back to process this stuff with, to really be honest about what I felt, to be honest that I was crushed, to be honest that I felt blindsided, to be honest that I felt like, in a way in the beginning, like, dang, I felt like I kind of wasted my time. To be honest that, man, I'm going to be so real. Like, Manosphere sounds good. Red Pill sounds good. Buying into that philosophy sounds good. Trying to find a way to become the bad boy and just throwing out all character and integrity out the window and all this niceness out the window, like sounded good because of the pain that I was experiencing. And, but God got a hold of me. You know what I'm saying? Like God using community, using coaching, God got a hold of me and allowing me to lean into him and heal with him, heal alongside him, really continue to rest in his word, allow his word to wash my mind. Turning off Drake Feel No Ways and turning on some Chandler Moore. He understands. Turning on some Maverick City music and turning on some, really specific worship music that helped me get through that period of time that, again, an area and space I've never experienced before. And it really helped me through. And one of the things that really helped me through that entire process to not only process the first rejection that happened, but also be present in the feelings that I was experiencing in the course of the follow-up year where, everything kind of was the same. Nothing really changed. No motion, had no progress was made. Everything was kind of stagnant and standstill. I was reminded of 1 Corinthians 13. We were really in space as men in that community, writing 1 Corinthians 13 and rewriting it, writing it and rewriting it every morning as a part of a challenge. And we did it for a week, but I decided to carry it with me, and I still do it to this day, being reminded of what love is. And a love that doesn't match energy, a love that doesn't wait for somebody else to do it first, and ultimately a love that we as believers are called to step into regardless of how other people move towards us. And this was really challenging because when I first started looking at it, you know, one of the first things that hit me was like, wow, there's a part of me that's still trying to find this kind of love through her. Like I'm trying to find this kind of love that God is describing through Paul's writing here through her. When in reality, this love comes from God. Like in order to move in this love, it comes from God, but also realizing that the same love that's being described, it is the love of God in and of itself. And it's a godly love that reminds people of who God is, that he sees them, that he values them, that he loves them, that he cherishes them, and that he desires to use them, to have them, to do life with them. And so when I first got to thinking about that, it really hit me when I put it in this manner that there's no greater love than Christ. And like really actually sinking in that, man, this whole time I've been moving at a speed of professing to other people how much God loves them. And yet I haven't even really fully immersed in the love God has for me. Like I haven't really fully immersed in the fact that God died for me, that God loves me, and that his love is the greatest love I'll ever encounter. And since that's the case, there's no love outside of him that could even match it, that could eclipse it. And so like, here I am trying to still chase this love and chase this fulfillment and chase this void through another human being who couldn't ever come close to the love God gives. I couldn't ever come close to the love God gives. And at best, all I can do is reflect it, but I can never duplicate it. And when I started thinking of it like that, and really rehearsing and washing my mind every day in 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4 through 8a, which starts at love never fails. Oh my goodness, y'all, it changed everything. I mean, it was rehearsing that every day that allowed me to see where I wasn't being honestly loving at. Rehearsing it every day allowed me to see just how much depth being at such a level of love requires. That it's a glimpse of unconditional love that is the baseline of the reflection of the love of Christ. It exposed in my heart those areas where I was like, dang, I'm really doing this for attention, or I'm really doing this because I want to hear you say thank you. I'm really doing this because I really want the reward that I think I'm going to get at the end. Instead of just saying, nah, man, I just do this because I have love for you, because I'm doing this out of love, because I'm just doing this not out of need from anything from you, not because I desire for you to give me anything, but just because I have the capacity to give it to you, because it's just from a place of unconditional love. I don't need anything from you in order for this to be meaningful, valuable. And when I started thinking like that, y'all, it changed the game. Now, granted, I still stayed. I still hoped that things would work out. I still hoped and wanted for the relationship to turn out the way it did. And ultimately it didn't. You know, even with these changing perspectives on what love is, what process and patience looks like, what making room and availability for someone else looks like, it still didn't turn out in the way that I wanted. December comes around, we meet again, we have some dinner, we have an opportunity to do that. And it was at the table where she breaks the news. You know, she first asks, as we're having regular conversations, going really good, you know, just enjoying each other's company. It slowly shifts into a conversation about us and where things are, where it was going. And she kind of starts off by saying, hey, so, you know, you're pretty mature, you know where you are. I'm paraphrasing here because I want to get the main points, but just give you some context. Like, you know, you know where you are, and you know what you bring, and so do I, and things of that sort. And, you know, ultimately she comes around and she says, I just help me understand. That's kind of how she phrased it. Help me understand why I can't see this past a romantic space. And in a way, it was kind of presented as if I was to fill in the blank, you know, maybe in a way of like, man, maybe she just wasn't comfortable enough to say it outright. maybe wanting to spare feelings, you could perhaps assume a lot. But instead of going that route, I decided to go along with it. I was like, okay, well, um, I guess this kind of goes into some of the thoughts and notes that I've been taking over the year, you know, kind of thinking the whole way that it's been fear. You've been possibly afraid of stepping into the space due to what's happened in your past. And maybe there's that subconscious fear that things are going to turn out the same way. And it's kind of presenting a hesitancy for you to actually step into this space. And she was like, no, you really haven't given me a reason to do that. You haven't really given me a reason to be fearful. And then she continued on with either before that statement or after it. I can't necessarily remember the order, but I do remember she mentions the consistency, the effort, everything's there. Like if it was everything, like this would be it. Like this is a no-brainer to step into this. If everything was as I would want it to be. This is everything. Just the character, the integrity, all of that kind of stuff. So she's obviously sharing a lot of positive insights about who I am as a person, and then reassuring me at the same time that there's nothing wrong with me. It's just more of what I come to conclude with and actually finish the sentence in some kind of aspect. I said, okay, well, if it's not fear, then you just don't want it from me. And she nods her head. She's like, yeah. And so, even though that wasn't the response that I wanted, even in the moment, at the table, it was a gut punching feeling. It was kind of like reliving the first rejection that happened. It was kind of like everything that was said on that phone call was reiterated just in a different fashion in person, face to face. Just go around. It's almost like she said the same thing, and I just didn't believe it the first time. I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. I was in that denial stage of grief for the longest time. And when she said that, I digested for a second and I said, okay, yeah. I respect that. I honor that. And, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? And I ultimately, get to the place of obviously saying, well, I guess moving forward, we're just cordial. You know what I'm saying? Cordial, catch up when we can, all those kinds of things. And then obviously, I didn't expect anything less, and just basically coming to an agreement with everything. And as we're finishing the dinner, it was so unique because you would probably expect anybody else to just be done with the conversation, be done with everything, flip tables, turn up, yelling, screaming, be all dysfunctional, and cut up in a public space, perhaps crash out, if you will. Instead, my response was thank you. I looked her dead in her face and I said, thank you. Thank you so much for telling me this and for letting me know. And I couldn't stop saying thank you at the table for her rejection. And noting that she could have ghosted, she could have done a lot to avoid that conversation. And the whole time of her sharing these things, prior to me even mentioning a thank you, I wanted to be sure that I created enough of a safe space for her to feel safe enough to let it go. Because I needed her to say what she wanted to say and not be in fear of my response or body language, and really, really just get it off her chest. And so she does, as I continue to reassure that, hey, this is a safe space. Let it go. Like, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? Being real calm and cool and allowing my body language to be very receptive in that entire exchange. And at the end of the rejection, I say thank you. We finished the dinner. I asked her also what was the purpose, what did she think the purpose of the relationship was, or the connection in this time. She mentioned something like seeing God's heart. And I think to me, that's one of the greatest privileges I could ever have, one of the greatest compliments I could ever receive from somebody telling me that they see Christ's heart in me. No matter how the relationship turns out, for good, bad, or indifferent. That is just one of the greatest compliments you can give me, is that you see Christ in me. Because that just means that I'm doing the right thing. I'm doing what's needed. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it didn't make the rejection sting less, because it ultimately wasn't what I wanted to hear. And she made mention of that. Like, I know it's not what you want to hear. And it's like, nah, but see, it's not really about what I wanted to hear. It's what's needed. Like, and I remember sharing some stories to help her, and that maybe possibly, I don't know, played a role in helping her share what was on her heart, from, some coaching sessions that I've been a part of, and listening to those stories that were explained to me, and then even explaining them to other people. How you make change because it's the right thing to do, not because you're trying to get something out of somebody else, and just sharing some examples and stories that I had learned in between our time of meeting in person that maybe played a role in pushing her to that space. And I was just so grateful. I was so grateful that she said that to me. I was so grateful that she was able to communicate that to me, and be honest about it, even though it might have been a little bit of a struggle for her to share it at first. She ultimately got there, and I was so grateful. We had, exchanged pleasantries, hugged, hey, we'll see each other around, those kinds of things. And she's good people. She's an awesome friend, somebody that I'm privileged and grateful to know. And I'm so appreciative of the maturity that she's placed in my life, that she's definitely played in my life, and the transformation and maturity that I've undergone since our connection. That's a long story that took up like an hour and 25 minutes. And what's crazy is these lessons are about to wrap up this whole thing in like a few minutes. Because maybe you've been listening to the story, you've been shaking your head, you maybe have put your feet in my shoes and have gone on the roller coaster ride with me of the emotions, the blindsiding, the unexpected ending. Maybe perhaps when I told you I went back a second time, you probably called me a dummy, said I was silly. Bro, how could you? What are you doing? And I feel all that, right? I really do. But in the name of vulnerability and just being in this space, and obviously wanting to create a space for people who watch and tune into this, to be able to listen to experiences that I've had, and maybe you relate, maybe you resonate, maybe you have questions, maybe you're currently in a certain situation right now where you're just not sure what's happening and what's going on in the relationship. Maybe you wrestle with a fear of rejection like I've wrestled with that fear of rejection. Not really sure how you're going to respond if somebody is to tell you no when you do all the right things. Not really sure how you're going to handle somebody saying they don't want you, they don't like you, they aren't feeling you the way you're feeling them. Maybe if it's not the fear of rejection, you're concerned with how people view you, and so it can easily turn into people pleasing. Maybe you have an anxious attachment style, something that's resemblant to what I carried, where in the midst of conflict, in the midst of miscommunications, in the midst of those kinds of situations that I've expressed, and maybe it's in a different way and format for you, you're quick to cling. You're really quick to cling to the person. You're quick to cling and try to solve the issue so that everybody's at peace, so that everybody's at ease, so that everybody is okay and everybody is happy. Maybe there's a part of you in that anxious attachment that when you go an extended period of time from hearing from somebody, you just begin to think the worst. You begin to think that you're the problem. You begin to think that everything you're doing is wrong and it's not enough, and they don't like you, they aren't feeling you, and all these assumptions that you come up with that would make sense of the situation. Maybe you're that person who, when you were rejected or went through that breakup, you were looking for the why. Because the math was not mathing. The way you treated them, the way you loved them, the way you poured into them, and yet they turned around and said no. They turned around and said they didn't want it. They turned around and said they didn't want you. And you look back on everything you did and you can't even find one error, let alone anything that lets you know that this was a decision you could have expected, you could have seen coming. So you feel blindsided, you feel betrayed, you feel lied to, you feel misled. And most of all, you're crushed because out of all people, it wasn't supposed to come from them. And even though this is just a rejection story that I'm sharing with you, not a breakup story, we were never official. We were never officially dating. I really want to hopefully give you a peace of mind in that it is okay to feel what you feel and your feelings are validated. First and foremost, like your feelings are validated. What you're feeling about the situation is not entirely wrong in the sense of that's your legitimate experience with the situation. Like, be honest about what you feel. Be honest that this wasn't what you were expecting. Be honest in saying, hey, not only was this an unexpected outcome, but man, I just feel so misled and betrayed. I just feel like I wasted my time. I just feel like such an idiot for doing like I want you to really be honest in this space. Because that's okay. Like, just because you're a man, you're a woman, you're an adult, you have responsibilities. Just because you were interested in somebody and it didn't go your way, like, you're not weak for feeling emotions. You're a human being. Like, if you're not feeling emotions as a human being, we got to go get some things checked out. Because that's not good. That's not healthy. That's not okay. And I think we have to give ourselves permission to be human. Even in the midst of experiencing rejection, something that we really wanted that doesn't want us. And a part of that is allowing those emotions to come in waves and hit us as they come. And it's grieving. And in order to grieve, you got to acknowledge what was first lost, And I think it's really important to make space and room for that. And that's a huge lesson that I learned from my own experience of rejection. The tears that I cried, the crushing that I felt, the disappointment that I underwent, the failed expectations that I underwent, trying to make sense of it. Yeah, I went through it all. And I'm out on the other side of it because in that time of such a vulnerable space, not only was I allowing myself to feel the feelings, as we just described, but I also gave myself permission to hurt while I healed. And healing with God. You have to pay attention to what you're listening to. You have to pay attention to who you're listening to and who you're giving your ear to in the midst of your healing. Not everybody gets permission to speak to you in your most vulnerable states. And if you're not careful, you will give your ear to people who will give you self-soothing messages that will only put Band-Aids over your wound and not actually deal with it surgically. It's kind of crazy because, if you've ever had a broken limb, if you ever had an infected wound in your body, you would know that it's probably easier, especially maybe if you're somebody who maybe doesn't have insurance or good health insurance, to get surgery, or perhaps maybe you think you can go longer than you need to, or you think you can go longer than you can without having it looked at. You would look at it and go, man, we're good. You know what I'm saying? Like, we can just wrap this up, put some Band-Aids over this mug, put some bandages over this mug, wrap it up, call it a day. We're going to be straight. And even though you do all that, you put the bandages on and you put the Band-Aid wraps on, put all that kind of stuff that's basically trying their best to hold your body together. It doesn't stop from the internal wound still needing attention. It doesn't stop your body from learning how to now navigate with the broken limb and the infected wound. Because not only does the wound and the broken limb continue to deteriorate, but your body has a way of now adjusting to what's out of order that now becomes the new norm. And so now you walk with a limp for the rest of your life. All because we refuse to go get actual surgery and deal with the internal wound or the internal broken limb. And if we don't actually do something about that, our bodies will adjust and we'll start thinking that it's the new normal, when in reality, we're still out of order. Because there was something that was hurting, that was screaming for our attention, but we decided to numb it. We decided to ignore it. We decided not to address it. And now not only are we hurting ourselves for the remainder of our existence in that area, but we're also hurting others. Because now no one really gets the same access to us like they once did, due to us not taking that seriously and addressing it and recovering from it. All I'm trying to tell you in that one analogy is that we have to get good at addressing our pains, not just feeling them, but addressing them, not just expressing them, but being honest with them and saying, yo, this is how I feel. And this is what I'm going to give my ear to help me deal with my perspectives and programmings on what I'm currently experiencing in this rejection. Yeah, she rejected me and said she didn't want me, but that doesn't mean that all women are the same. It doesn't mean that all women are trash. It doesn't mean that all women are hoes and tricks and ain't no good. It doesn't mean that she's a hater. It doesn't even mean she's a bad person. It doesn't mean she's the worst. It doesn't mean she's a liar. It just means that it wasn't wanted. And even though I may not be wanted by somebody else individually, earthly, here to the same magnitude I may have wanted them, that doesn't mean I'm unwanted by anyone. It doesn't mean that I am unlovable. It doesn't mean that no one wants to touch me. It doesn't mean that no one wants to do life with me and engage with me to such a degree. It just means that that wasn't the right one for such a time as this. And the only way that I'm able to curate such a perspective on that is not by listening to Fresh and Fit podcast or listening to all these other manosphere spaces that, even though they mean well, are really pouring gasoline into an already lit fire. Encouraging you that the best way to overcome rejection is not only to get you a plethora of females on your arm, but to, fix the problem by all these external validations of money, status, increasing your sex count and your sex game, and getting reps in because no woman wants a man that's not experienced. Nah, man, I think you just get into the word. I think you get around community of people and like-minded people who believe in the same God and same Christ you believe in, who believe that you have the capacity to be healed from this and restored from this and be able to love again, who are able to speak life into you and encourage you in some of your lowest, most vulnerable spaces, who are able to tell you that you are above and not beneath. You're the head, not the tail, who can tell you and remind you of who God has made you to be, who God has created you to be, who can remind you of the greatest love that you're inseparable from. And put those things into context, and not to put Jesus glitter over your wound, but to remind you of who you are in the midst of a space where who you are is really foggy and disconnected due to the pain you're experiencing. So not only do you need to feel your feelings and you need to be honest about them, and not only do you need to also, understand that it's okay to hurt while you heal and give your ear into the right places. That means adjusting your playlist. Stop giving your ear to these sad songs that are describing your situation to the T. I know it's fitting to the feeling. I know Rod Wave is fitting to the feeling. I know Drake and all these other guys are fitting to the feeling. I get it. And they're not really helping you deal with your emotions. They're not really helping you heal. If anything, they're just keeping that same thing rehearsed in your mind. I have a scripture in mind before I go to the last point, before ending this long video and rant that I've got for you. And I'm sure there will be a part 2 to this that I think is really helpful to just dive deeper into some of these takeaways and how to handle rejection, how to go through it, and really deal with it appropriately. But there's a scripture that comes to mind. I believe it is 2 Samuel. No, it's not 2 Samuel. It's 1 Samuel. I'm gonna find it. Just give me 1 second. Aha! 1 Samuel chapter 16. Okay, we got the handy dandy Bible right here, man. We're just gonna go with the text because this is so interesting. When we talk about mourning, when we talk about grieving, when we talk about grieving the loss of something or somebody, and listening and putting ourselves in the proximity of things that are rehearsing the pain and rehearsing the guilt, rehearsing the shame, rehearsing what we once had. I know y'all know all the hit songs. If there's one song that comes to my mind, Tony Braxton, Long As I Live. Hey, I'll never get over Yeah, y'all need to check that out. Of that, I'm telling you, it's killing me. You know what I'm saying? Like Tony Braxton out here singing jams, and Rod Wave singing jams, Drake singing jams, and yet we'll keep you in a loop rehearsing the same stuff and the same pains. And so this is why it's so important that not only are you given a time to grieve, but that grieving isn't meant to be something you park your life at. You know, 1 Samuel 16, in context, Samuel has anointed Saul. You know, the Israelites have clamored for a king, and God has decided to answer their prayer. And Samuel is the one who anoints Saul as king. And Saul goes rogue, to say the least, right? Saul goes rogue. And now Samuel is about to anoint David. But I just want you to check out the first few verses in 1 Samuel 16. He says, "Now the Lord said to Samuel, you have mourned long enough for Saul. I have rejected him as king of Israel. So fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. Find a man named Jesse who lives there, for I have selected one of his sons to be my king." But Samuel asked, "How can I do that? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me. Take a heifer with you," the Lord replied, "and say that you have come to make a sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you which of his sons to anoint for me." So Samuel did as the Lord instructed. That's the first part. That ends at the first part of verse 4. So in this whole entire context, Samuel's been mourning for Saul, and God is speaking to Samuel and says, "Yo, you've mourned long enough. It's time to move. It's time to move. You've mourned long enough. You've mourned." And then he, on top of that, he says, "I have rejected him as king of Israel." So what's interesting is that so many times we think that these rejections are about us not being enough, when in some cases it could just be God separating the relationship. It could be God just simply separating people from you because it doesn't align with where he desires you to go. And when God has something on your life that is of so much value, he does not just want you connected to anybody and anything, especially with people who just don't align with where you're going and who you're called to be. And that doesn't make them any less of a person. I don't think of the person that rejected me, or the lady that rejected me, the woman that rejected me, the people that have rejected me, the friends that have rejected me, as somebody who's less than me, or hey, I'm better than them because they don't align in my calling. Like, no, that's not at all what God is trying to get to you here. I think really what can be communicated through this, though, is that oftentimes we spend so long mourning over what we wished was. We spend so long crying and stuck on the replay of the breakup and the rejection of what we wish somebody was for us, that not only do we no longer see what is, and we no longer remain in the present, but we can no longer put ourselves in the vicinity and proximity of hearing what God has for us next. And if Samuel was just so determined to grieve over Saul, he would not have put himself in proximity to hear God speak to him in this way. And then furthermore, be able to receive the direction God has for him next, for his next, for the next king, for the next anointing of the next king that God had in store and in mind. And I just want to encourage you, if you are somebody who's going through rejection, if you're experiencing rejection, that there are many, many times and many, many moments, many, many rejections that you may experience in the course of your life that actually is God's doing. And maybe you don't understand it now, but one day you will. And you'll look back and you'll appreciate God for not allowing that relationship to cultivate like you wanted it to at the time. You will appreciate God for not allowing that relationship to come to fruition, because if he did, you wouldn't be where you are. And there is so much power to being able to give your ear to God in the midst of grief, because at least then, not only do you have somebody who's present in your own suffering, but somebody who can also whisper to you the next steps. And if you're leaned in closer to him, not only are you going to be in proximity to hear him, but you're not going to miss what he has for you next, because you stayed too long in a grieving place. You know, I'll go into another text of scripture. Maybe Samuel doesn't really connect with you. What about Joshua 1? You know, Moses just died. You know, I know we look at Moses and we like, hey, shoot, man, that's another brother gone, dead and gone. You know, he just out of there. It is what it is. But not to Israel. I mean, Moses was that dude. Moses had such significant influence over Israelites. I mean, he's the guy that God called to deliver the Israelites out of Egypt. And then he led them through the years of wilderness as they rejected the promised land when they were out right outside of it due to fear. And so this is their leader. He has significant impact on them. And yet God's like, yeah, you're going to die. You're not going to see the promised land. And you're going to give the reins to Joshua. You're going to go on about your merry way. That's exactly what happens. And what's so interesting is that they're at the bottom of a mountain as Moses has died. The Lord buried him at the top of the mountain in which he died. They've discovered he's died. And so they're at the bottom of this mountain. Joshua, who's up next, who's the predecessor of Moses. Not only is he now given the mantle to lead millions of people to this promised land, but now he also has to carry the weight of the grief that is now taking place from the Israelites over Moses. Who's their leader? It's all they know, and Joshua himself is grieving. Joshua is about to step into a space he don't even know if he has a real capacity to really do it. So the first things we see God speaking to Joshua in Joshua chapter 1 is what? Be strong and courageous, right? I want you to pay attention to this first verse. This is pretty much all these first two verses is really all I'm going to read from Joshua. This is Joshua 1, chapter 1, verse 1. After the death of Moses, the Lord's servant, the Lord spoke to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' assistant. He said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Moses, my servant, is dead. Therefore, the time has come for you to lead these people, the Israelites, across the Jordan River into the land I am giving you. And then I promise you, here's verse 3. I think this is interesting too. I promise you what I promised Moses. Wherever you set foot, you will be on land I have given you. From the Negev wilderness in the south of Lebanon mountains in the north, from the Euphrates River in the east of the Mediterranean Sea in the west, including all the land of the Hittites, no one will be able to stand against you as long as you live. For I will be with you as I was with Moses. I will not fail you or abandon you. Be strong and courageous, says verse 6. For you are the one who will lead these people to possess all the land I swore to their ancestors I would give them. And he says be strong and courageous quite a few times throughout this chapter. But here's the whole purpose of me even mentioning Joshua chapter 1. Is that in the midst of a significant transition of experiencing losing their most well-known leader in Moses, and now having to lead a people into the promised land that God is ready to give them, that they are now ready to receive because the previous generation has died off, God reassures Joshua that Moses is dead. He's not coming back. I know you really miss him, and I know you really want him to be here, and I know you really wish him that he was here, but Moses is dead. He's not coming back. And it's time to move. And it's in the same context that we just read that God not only makes room for the grief of Israelites. Please don't get this wrong. Like, grieving is a part of the human experience. We will grieve the loss of people, relationships, things throughout the course of our life. And God makes room for that. God holds space for that. And anybody who tells you differently does not really be looking at their Bible. God makes room for that. But please understand that God does not desire you to park your life at grief. And that even though I may not be able to tell you how much you can grieve and how long to grieve, how to grieve and how long to grieve, I can assure you that there is a greater chance that you are not supposed to park the rest of your life at grief. And the Lord really speaks here to Joshua, which I think is so unique to the text, that Moses is dead and he's not coming back, but I'll be with you. Be strong and courageous. For the same thing I promised Moses is what I'm promising you. And so there's an effort of mourning and moving. And mourning and moving in our day to day. Hey, listen, cry your tears and do your gratitude list. Cry your tears and read your scriptures. Cry your tears and be in community with people who are willing to hold space for you as you process what's happening. As you process the rejection, as you process the relationship that you've lost, as you process the long-term relationship that you thought was headed to marriage and all of a sudden is nowhere to be found, as you process the person that you thought was your everything and that you thought you could trust and be honest with, and yet they cheated on you, to process the divorce, to process the loss and grievous time that you're experiencing as you're transitioning jobs, as you lost your job, as you don't know what your next steps are. Yes. Cry your tears. Tears is your body informing you that we have to let this out in order to regulate. So regulate. and allow the tears to flow. And I think there's so much power in being able to mourn and move, because some of us have been stuck at the bottom of the mountain as we've rehearsed the relationship that we wish was there. We've rehearsed the breakup. We've rehearsed the rejection. It's been hard for us to let go of this person, all because we have refused to accept what is. And we continuously feed into what we hoped such a person and situation could have been with us and for us. And when we start accepting what is, it's what allows us to be able to move forward in a healthier manner. So grieving is not bad. Grieving is not wrong. Cry your tears, man. It's all good in the hood. Just remember that that's not where you're supposed to park your life at. And in the midst of your tears flowing, remind yourself of what you value. Remind yourself of your values. Remind yourself of the values you're looking to create. Remind yourself of what you're grateful for today. Lord, this hurts, and I'm grateful for another day and another opportunity you've given me. As tears flow, as emotions rise, as you bounce from denial to anger, to bargaining, to depression, to back to anger, to denial, then you go to depression, then you go to bargaining, depression, and you bounce to all these different stages of grief. Yeah, it's okay. Be there and be present in that. And just as God speaks to Samuel, I think he may be speaking to a lot of us in this video. How long are you going to mourn over what I've rejected? How long are you going to mourn over what I have personally severed from your life in order to keep your life, in order to keep what I've put in you, in order to keep what is so valuable in your life in your possession? So because it's fitted for someone else who has the capacity to journey with you where you're going and to hold space for you for who you're becoming. But here's another thought that I've had in mind too. I know we've talked about love, and I think we can save that for another conversation. I've touched on that a little bit in this video. Here's the last thought I want to give to you in the lessons. Not only is it okay to grieve, not only is it okay to deal with that and mourn that, and hurt while you heal, but we also need to be honest and be careful of what we give our ear to in the midst of what we're grieving, right? Of how we're operating through the rejection. Get around people who are going to pour into us, who are going to give us insight, who are going to give us direction, who are going to comfort us, who are going to speak directly to us. Obviously, being guided through the scriptures and remaining in God's presence, as He is the one that can help us through such a rejection and such a hurting time. But also just, of course, being reminded that we can mourn and move, right? God makes room for mourning. God makes room for that. And that's not where we're supposed to park the rest of our lives. So, hey, cry your tears and realign your values. Cry your tears and practice gratitude, all that good stuff. But here's probably the greatest thing you're going to get. The greatest thing you're going to get from this entire video that I think is a phenomenal lesson if you're someone who's experiencing rejection. And that is, rejection is either about preparation or preference. Yeah. I want you to really receive that. Rejection is either about preference or preparation. Preparation or preference. They either prefer something different than you, or they aren't prepared for you. I just want to drop that on you, because sometimes we easily can get into these spaces where we think because somebody said no to us, then not only does that equate us to now being unwanted and no longer lovable or available for long-term relationships and marriage, available to be loved, available to be wanted, but then we take it so personal. We take the rejection so personal that we allow that wound to become such an emotional crater that it now becomes a part of our identity. We don't even get to introduce ourselves to people anymore without telling them that we are worthless. We aren't worth anything. We don't even get the privilege of being able to tell somebody our life story without telling them how much we are still not over the breakup, and how much inadequate we feel. And it's communicated, if not through our words, through our body language and how we show up in these spaces. And so rejection is either about preference or preparation. And I really want you to understand that and let that sit in your spirit, sit in your mind, and replay that over and over and over again. Because you just got to consider the source, yo. Sometimes you got to consider the source of the people who reject you, because so many people really don't even realize what they're rejecting. Like, have you ever tried to put your car keys in the hands of a 2-year-old? What you think they're going to do with that car keys? They might play with it for a little bit, but then they're going to do what? They're going to go pick up the blocks and go pick up the Legos and go pick up their favorite toy that's been laying on the floor and toss them keys somewhere else other than where you initially gave it to in their hand. That's because they don't even understand the value of what they're holding. And too often we get extremely frustrated at people for mishandling us when truth is they didn't even know what was in their hands to begin with. They couldn't see the value. And yet we are upset. And yet even more than upset, we are trying to force them to see our value when they don't even have the capacity to see it. And we just stay in this rehearsed loop over and over again, banking on who we wish this person was, on the potential of this person, ignoring what they really showed us through their behaviors. And not only is that not fair to them, it's not fair to you. And so when we talk about preparation or preference, please believe that neither option, whether they say, hey, I'm not prepared for you, or hey, I don't prefer you, it's not about you. I know that you're on the other end of the rejection. It's hard to say, hey, how can it not be about me because they're rejecting me? Again, not only do we consider the source, but you also recognize that if it's about preparation or preference, even if it's not about me, I love me so much. I love what God is doing in me so much. I love what God has to say about me so much. I love me some me so much that it doesn't matter who says no to me. I'm going to be good. It doesn't matter how many people say no to me. When I know the right yes is on the way in some aspect, that's going to make up for all the no's I've ever received. It doesn't matter who says no to me, because regardless of what they could ever give me, it doesn't match the greatest love that is Christ. Now hear me when I say all this, because I'm not trying to throw any Jesus glitter on your wound. I know how legitimate this rejection feels. And I know you're ready to throw in the towel, and you're ready to turn it in, and you're ready to put on your bad boy cut, and you're ready to go in and just throw all the integrity out the window, all the character out the window. You're done with being the nice guy. You're done with being the guy that everybody laughs with and loves, but deep down can't see the tears falling from your eyes in the middle of the night because you're wondering what's going to happen next, and you're tired of feeling the way you feel, and you're ready to give it all up. I understand where you're coming from, and I understand your pain, but I need you to be reminded that God has intentionally created you, has intentionally designed you in such a way as this, not just to be a blessing to him, but be a blessing to other people. There's something so valuable in you that he doesn't allow everybody to get in close proximity to you. There's something so valuable in you that he does not desire you to just be tossed around to and fro and mishandled by anybody and everybody. There's something so valuable in your life that God does not desire you to just put you yourself in the hands of other people who don't know what to do with you on their best day. Okay? And this isn't some motivational speech and some motivational message to help you see things and just start boo-booing on people. No, not at all. Not at all. Because truth be told, those people who don't really see the value in you, they're coming from hurt places too. That's an opportunity to be gracious to those people, because part of why they can't see it is because of some of the damages they have yet to be healed from. And unhealed wounds and unprocessed wounds have the capacity to blind you, to put blinders on your eyes, to put colored tint glasses over your eyes, to where not only do you see things differently, but you don't see people the same. You don't see the environment the same. You just see it through the lens of your wounds, not through the lens of purpose. And that's where things get lost. And so I just really want to take this time, as I've said so much in this episode. I can't believe we've already went 2 hours in sharing that story. And I don't even know if I covered all the details. I think maybe if you guys want a part 2 to this, and the part 2 will just be more of like, let's walk through the journals. Like if you guys are interested in seeing some of the journals, seeing some of the conversations, seeing some of the processes that I went through as I experienced the rejection and my story and the part of the rejection that happened, man, like comment below. Comment the keyword journal. Let me know. If you've made it this far, you want to see some more of that, we can definitely hop into it. But I just really want you to understand that when people say rejection is God's redirection, that is an honest statement. And how we process rejection is just as important. And I think a part of processing rejection is being able to learn how to give to ourselves what we're expecting other people to give us. A part of processing rejection applicably is learning how to love ourselves enough to where we don't need other people to be a certain way in order for us to love them consistently. Nor do we need people to choose us in order to be validated in who we are and who God has called us to be. If God thought you needed a cosigner in this life, he would have gave you one, but he didn't. That ought to say a lot. We really need to get in our minds that rejection is summarized in preparation or preference. And it's not something to take so personal. Jesus tells the disciples in the Gospels as he sends them out 2 by 2 into the city and into the lands to preach the gospel. He says, if somebody kicks you out, knock the dust off your feet. Knock the dust off your feet and keep moving. For Sodom and Gomorrah is better off than them. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that the people that reject you are in any way, shape, or form a reflection of Sodom and Gomorrah, nor are they condemned for rejecting you. Okay, let's slow down. What I am saying, however, is that the whole purpose of this shaking the dust off your feet, it was a symbolic gesture in one way in this culture that they aren't going to take what this is personally. This is not going to get the privilege of becoming an eternal wound based off of their decision, based off of what they failed to see. And that's what I want you to get there. I just really want you to get that. Don't allow somebody's rejection of you. Don't allow their rejection of you, their no to you, get you so riled up and so dysregulated that you're ready to throw everything away because somebody didn't see the value you had. And before you can expect other people to see the value you carry, I need you to get into a place where you remind yourself every day of the value you got. I need you to get into your gratitude spaces. I need you to remind yourself of what God has given you. I need you to remind yourself of the people that God has placed around you that has blessed you in a positive direction. I need you to remind yourself of the unique gifts and talents that you have and that God has blessed you with. I need you to remind yourself that you are exceptional, that God has made you exceptionally. And because God has made you exceptionally, he speaks exceptional things. Because he likes what he made, he speaks exceptional things. I need you to remind yourself. I need you to remind yourself of how God sees you. It doesn't mean that the rejection and the pains that you experience will get easier. It doesn't mean that it won't hurt. What it does mean is that you'll have the capacity to hurt and heal. You'll have the capacity to mourn and move. You will have the capacity to let go and move forward. You will have the capacity to feel and be present in those emotions and forgive the person that rejected you and not look to destroy them and not look to call them out of their name because they all of a sudden didn't want you, and not to demean them and demoralize them on your way up. And meaning not you don't have to be passive aggressive and post on your social medias, man, I can't believe people just ain't the same no more. People ain't 10 toes down. People really fake nowadays. You don't really know what people be on. Hashtag it won't never happen again. Hashtag fool me once. Like, come on, fam. Like, we don't have to live in that space. But what we can do is say, man, that rejection stung. That rejection hurt. And I still choose to honor that person, love that person, respect their decision, not cross boundaries in the name of love, and heal from the wound of rejection. You have the capacity to do that. And I think your best bet to do that is with God, not with Red Pill, not with Manosphere, not with people pouring into you all this negative stuff to kind of get you riled up into making poor decisions and making you think that you're better than other people. And as a means of you standing tall, you got to tear other people down, putting your identity in the hands of other people, putting your identity in the hands of women. What are we talking about? Nah, fam, that's just not the way to go. That's not the way to go. And from my story, she is a dear friend. I consider her a good friend of mine. She is such cool people. Oh my goodness. I talk about her to this day. If anybody asks about that situation or anything of that sort, man, people that have had influence in my life. I mean, I even went as far as to just show appreciation to the maturity that she's played in my life, because without this encounter, I would not have had exposed to me all the things that were exposed in me throughout that process that would have given me an opportunity to look at those things, be honest about them, and heal through them. And so I'm so grateful. I am just beyond grateful for the impact she's had on my life that is positive. And yes, it came through rejection. Yes, it came through something that maybe wasn't wanted in the moment, but it was needed. And I'm so grateful that it happened. I'm so grateful God didn't allow it to happen. I'm so grateful that God allowed that rejection to be something that's a part of my story. And I think for you to learn, for you to be able to turn your rejection into something that is a part of your story for the betterment of other people, to be something that you're able to look back on and be appreciative of, it's going to come through you looking at pain through the lens of purpose. God, what is this doing in me? God, what is this saying to me? What are you trying to get to me with this pain that I'm feeling deep in my chest? Because Lord, this don't feel good. Everything I wanted, no longer available. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I just want you to be reminded. If I could shout this to the rooftops, I would. I just want you to be reminded that when you consider the source of those who reject you, you'll learn that rejection is either by preparation or preference. And regardless of which one it is, it's never about you. Because when you learn to love you enough and see yourself the way God sees you, when you really embrace that and learn to embrace that, it don't matter who passes up on you. It doesn't matter who says no to you. Because all you need is that one right yes to make all the difference. And when you're satisfied with who you are, you'll learn to persevere and show resilience through rejection. Not saying it won't hurt. Not saying you won't want relationships. Not saying you won't want to date and be married. We all have our processes. And God hears that. And God sees that. And God makes room for that. And I do too. Like, it's completely okay to feel some type of way. And thought that it would work out. And maybe this isn't something you hear now, but it's something you hear later. But I just really want this to be something that you really digest. Because if we're not careful, rejection can become a wound that destroys us. And I don't want you to be a part of that crowd that is so destroyed by rejection that you are now trying to lead other people from unhealed wounds, causing more damage and harm than good. And trust me, I've been there. I've been in that journey. And I hope that this story and this was something that connected with you oh so greatly, as we just aim to process these things here. We just aim to process them. We aim to be vulnerable about them, so honest and transparent about these things, about these stories, about these experiences, all in the name of helping you learn to heal, recover from rejection, and learn to do relationships the right way, from a biblical way. All right? Man, I think that's it. We got out all we needed to. This is the longest episode I've ever done in my life. So there you have it. If you stuck all the way through, let me know in the comment section below. And I appreciate you guys oh so much for tuning in. More conversations on the way, with so many other perhaps experiences on my end, but even just questions, considerations, and perspectives, looking to do and touch on all things healing through rejection and breakups and heartbreaks, all those kinds of things, learning to do relationships the right way and heal in a godly way. All right. It's your boy signing off. Until next time, be easy and be breezy, my friends. Peace.